Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorsi, and today I'm very, very honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Miss Grazia Vittadini. She is an Italian aerospace executive, and she graduated in aeronautical engineering, and she specialized in aerodynamics. Miss Vittadini began her professional career on the Italian side of the Eurofighter Consortium before joining Airbus Operations in Germany in 2002 and setting on her path towards senior management positions. Most recently, she was the Chief Technology Officer of the aerospace and defense company Airbus. Additionally, she was once an Executive Vice President, Head of Engineering, and member of the Executive Committee of Airbus Defense and Space. Prior to these positions, she had been Senior Vice President, Head of Corporate Audit and Forensic, responsible for Airbus Group audit activities worldwide. As you can see, she has an amazing career journey, and I'm so excited to be able to understand it on a deeper level. Welcome, Ms. Vittadini. Thank you so much for taking some time to inspire the future generations.
Well, please call me Grazia, Gitika. It is such a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, before we get into understanding what really drove you into coming to the space industry, could you tell us more about what your role in the aerospace industry is?
Sure. Well, the aerospace industry as a whole today is really in a very critical juncture, I'd say. We've made some very bold sustainability commitments, which just cannot be achieved using existing technologies. And this applies to air and space alike, right? So airplanes, helicopters, satellite launchers, drones, you name it. Now, technology is and remains definitely a key enabler to a sustainable future of the industry overall. And when I started my serving Airbus as Chief Technology Officer back in 2018, solving environmental issues really became the most obvious and urgent challenge. It's incredibly complex to achieve this goal, seeing also the complexity of our products. We need to develop very many different technologies and solutions at the same time, right? You can't just focus on one single solution. So you will have sustainable aviation fuels, alternative propulsion like hydrogen based on hydrogen. Of course, artificial intelligence is a fundamental enabler. Autonomous technologies are helping us, but also novel materials, or even very advanced computing techniques, quantum technologies, and so on and so forth. All this needs to happen concurrently and coherently. So until really we will have a zero emission, more intelligence, accessible flight for all of humanity, and clean space, of course, and zero noise for all what flies, I'd really like to think that my greatest contribution still lies ahead.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's awesome to see how in the aerospace industry, we still really care about not only the technological advancements that are occurring, but also protecting our environment and advancing that as well. So that is awesome. And, you began your career in Italy. So how was the transition into the aerospace company Airbus for you?
This is a very good question, Gitika, because it was a kind of a jump into something I didn't quite know how things, I didn't know how things would pan out, and if at all, and I really left my country chasing the dream of aerospace. I wanted to continue growing and developing in aerospace, in an aerospace industry. And I told myself, Grazia, you just try it, for 3 months. And if it doesn't work, you can always come back, right? That was 2000, and I never came back. And my starting at Airbus was amazing. I started in the northern part of Germany, so in the city of Hamburg, and I started as a temporary workforce. So I did not have a permanent contract, but that was okay, because the dream of pursuing really, developing an aircraft together with other thousands of brilliant engineers was just too big. So I just started as a temp, and then gradually, I became a permanent employee of the company, working on the A380, 4-engine, double-deck, 550 plus passengers, the most loved aircraft by passengers as of today, and working with other likely-minded colleagues from all over the world, not only Europe, also really without boundaries. Everybody hell-bent to pioneer aerospace solutions, not accepting the sky as the limit. That was absolutely my type of thing. And it also gave me the chance with the first money I earned to go for my pilot license. And so that runway, the runway around which, you know, we were building the A380 was also the first runway from which I took off as a pilot. So really difficult to describe that emotion, that feeling. And that's where it all started, my journey in aerospace.
Wow, was it nerve-wracking for you to move to a different country to pursue your career? Because I know a lot of individuals are always looking to travel to different areas to get those opportunities. So was that a nerve-wracking process for you?
It is a bit destabilizing if you pass me the expression. But you know, I had already some training because when I was 9 years old, my whole family moved to the United States. My dad was supposed to, he's always been working very much abroad as telecommunication engineer, and he was supposed to stay in Texas for 3 months. After a year, my mom said, you know what, we're coming. I was 9, my brother was 5, and my mom was expecting my brother. So it is a bit destabilizing because you need to start from scratch, reorient yourself, learn new languages, but it is so enriching, really, to open up and let, you know, different cultures, traditions, languages just sink in and embrace really the country hosting you in all its aspects is something absolutely which brings you forward, and you know, enhances also your understanding of the world. There is no good or bad or better or worse. It's just a matter of being different, right? And being a part of this wonderful planet.
Of course, that's so inspiring to hear. I think being able to embrace those different cultures and new experiences to learn more about yourself and others, and in that workplace environment, meeting diverse individuals with diverse experiences, it sounds amazing. So kind of delving a little bit into your research, for those who are unfamiliar with the term space debris, could you tell us more about what it is and why we should be concerned about it?
Definitely, Gitika. This is really one of my favorite topics, talking about, again, sustainability of space, right? Basically, when we do mention debris, we mean space junk, okay? So there's more, picture this, more than 40,000 objects flying out there, floating around the Earth orbit, and many more too small to be tracked all around our planet, right? So some are generated by satellites orbiting around the Earth, no longer operative, decaying. Back in the past, if I remember well, it was 2009, I believe, there was even an impact of two satellites, which really generated an enormous amount of debris. There was another satellite which exploded. We're talking about thousands and thousands of bits and pieces, really polluting the orbits around the Earth. And so basically, debris is all what flies out there and does not have a purpose. Okay, now objects above 10 centimeters can be tracked, and a lot of resources are being invested to track exactly the positioning of these bits and pieces around our planet, so that satellites, in case of emergency, can divert, can maneuver, so to avoid the collision, right? But and these are, let's say, the biggest parts of debris floating out there. But there's also, let's say, the category between 1 and 10 centimeters, which is very difficult to track, if not impossible, and poses a significant risk because it can impact another satellite. Satellites normally are shielded but there is the risk that a shield will not be enough. There is a risk of it impacting a spaceship, right? And we don't want to hinder space exploration. So, and the problem, unfortunately, is increasing because, as you certainly know, there's so many space satellites, satellite constellations being launched, right? We're talking about thousands and thousands of additional small satellites, which really pose a significant threat to other satellites and to space exploration. So there's different ways to cope with this incredible challenge for humanity. Leave no trace. So all current satellites need to be designed in order to have on board a post-mission disposal type of mechanism, right? So that when a satellite stops operating, it goes out of orbit by itself, right? It gets burned through the atmosphere. And if any parts remain, these fall into the ocean. Now, is this something we believe is sustainable on long term? I do not, absolutely. So I'm a strong advocate of the fact that tomorrow we need to be in a position to develop in-orbit services in order to repair, refuel, repurpose, basically inoperative satellites flowing out there. And maybe not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, I really believe we will need to actively clean up. So debris remediation missions, active debris removal is definitely something we're going to need to invest in for, again, the sake of our planet, of the space around it, and of humanity and space travel.
Yeah, thank you for putting the information into perspective. I feel like a lot of us overlook the space debris that's out there, and we're focused on the rocket launches, which is definitely exciting, but we also have to make sure we're keeping, the space healthy and clean. And that's something that's very important for us to look into. I know the European Space Agency is doing a lot of missions geared around, clearing the space debris, which is amazing. And so hopefully we can continue to invest in it. So you seem very passionate about the work that you're conducting. So I'm very curious to hear, what is the most exciting project or research that you've been a part of?
Okay, again, this is a very difficult question because I've been around a lot at Airbus. I've been on very many different missions, and it would really be difficult to single out one single project. One thing I will definitely never forget, it's the first flights. When you work on an aircraft, be it because you design a part or an assembly concept, and then that aircraft takes to the air for the first time, this is something absolutely difficult to describe. The emotions are very, very special. And matching that, similar to that, is when a satellite you have been following, contributing to with your teams is launched. And the first time, you switch on the solar arrays and they start recharging, and the satellite slowly comes to life enough to start its travel. At Airbus, electrical propulsion for satellites is the new standard for telecom satellites. And so seeing the satellite starting its journey towards the final orbit is something really undescribable. Yes.
Yes, the work that you have been a part of, and it's like actually there, it's actually doing something. I can just imagine. It sounds amazing and like a wonderful experience to see your work come to life.
Yeah.
And kind of moving a little bit away from your research, I'm also curious on your actual journey. So did you always imagine yourself in the career trajectory you have currently, or did you have some twists and turns in your journey?
This is a very insightful question, because indeed, originally I had a plan when I started at Airbus. I would have loved to be the chief engineer of the new narrow body aircraft, and I pictured it being totally recyclable, all metallic, modular, low cost, very easy to operate. But then things took a different turn. Why? Because basically along the way, doors were open to me and perspective were shown to me, which I didn't even know existed, right? So I think it is really fundamental to have a dream, to have an ambition, but then this should not keep you ideally, from having a tunnel vision. So keep your options open always, because the world out there is so big, and you cannot think you know everything in advance, and sometimes the opportunities are just yes, unplanned opportunities are just a pity to be left unexploited.
Yeah, of course. And you said that you kind of had like a sort of plan of what you wanted to do once you were in Airbus, but when did you identify your passion for space, engineering, and technology when you were a young girl?
Well, I grew up in Italy and in the United States, right? My basic education was more into the liberal arts, literature. I did Latin, Greek, philosophy. My house was always full of music, a lot of art, opera. I trained as professional ballet dancer, but I was always fascinated by airplanes since I was a very little girl. I had this ritual with my dad. Every year we'd go to the Museum of Science and Technology, spending hours into the aircraft pavilion, and so always loved airplanes, but I loved many other things at the same time, right? So um, if you ask me what did you want to be when you were a young girl, well, it did fluctuate very much, from being a commercial pilot, a military pilot, an astronaut, a ballerina, a firewoman. I had it all.
Mhm.
An archaeologist, a lawyer. I really did have, some. I did go zigzag. I didn't go straight to the point. And at a certain point, I wanted to. When I was a teenager back in Italy, I decided, I want to fly airplanes. I want to be a military jet fighter pilot. But at that time, girls were not allowed to fly military jets in Italy. Luckily, things have changed, but back then, that's how things were. And so I just said to myself, you know what? If I can't fly them, well, I'm going to build them. And that's how I turned to engineering and aerospace engineering specifically. So yeah, the interest was always there. I think um, the common denominator between all these different options has always been really curiosity and hands-on, having a hands-on attitude. I've always loved repairing my motorcycle, my bike, um, and keeping my mind again open to new things. So curiosity and willing to learn.
I feel like a lot of students can relate with what you said. I mean, me as a young girl, I used to go to the Air and Space Museum, which is an hour away from my house in Washington, D.C., with my family all the time. So that's where my fascination with space really ignited. So it's amazing to see how there's those connections. But of course, I went zigzag. At a point in time, I actually also wanted to be an archaeologist and a lawyer. So it was crazy. Like you just go all over the place. So I can definitely relate with what you were saying. Um, and I'm glad that you're able to figure out that even if you weren't able to fly those planes, you wanted to build it. I think that shows a lot of commitment to your passion and your persistence to never give up. So that's absolutely inspiring to hear. And of course, that was like probably the biggest obstacle when you were a teenager. But were there any other obstacles that kind of changed your direction or path in what you chose to pursue?
Um, well, I would say, you know, there have been many obstacles because the course of studies I've picked back then, aerospace engineering and aerodynamics as a specialization is not, you know, uh, it's not simple, and there were not many girls back then. We were something like 1%, and so you're always a bit the odd one
Yeah.
in the bunch. And well, you kind of get used to it with time, but it's always difficult to find really that sense of belonging when you're always the one sticking, not fitting into the scheme. But that kind of became also my again, a common denominator across all which accompanied me throughout my journey in the industry, and what prompted me again to leave Italy. I could have had some job not far from my city, from Milan. I would have been comfortable, close to my parents, to my friends, etc. But I really figured that that would have been a compromise I wasn't ready to accept, because I wanted to stay in the industry, totally fascinating by aviation, by space. And that was an important decision point, which prompted me to leave my country. And then throughout all the different steps of my journey within Airbus, as I mentioned, I've been around a lot, I've changed a lot of jobs. And the company, Airbus, is so big that every time you change job, you change division or department, you have to start from scratch again, right? And so there's great people at Airbus, and they wonder, I mean, what are you doing here? What is your added value? What do you bring to the picture? And so every time you need to find in yourself the resources to contribute at best and bring together the best people and achieve objectives which are very, very, very challenging. So I think my life was full of challenges in that sense, and I always manage using them to grow and to demonstrate myself. You can do it. You can do it.
That's a very positive mindset. I know, like, even to this day, I know, like, people who are like, I'm the only girl in my physics class. I feel so lonely. I feel so excluded or like left out or too like special in a way that it's uncomfortable for them. And so, what advice? I mean, you have a very positive mindset. So, like, when you were in that position, what did you think to overcome that, like that exclusiveness that you did have? How did you overcome from that situation? And what advice would you give to other girls out there who are probably the only girl in their physics class?
Well, it's a bit of a mix of different tactics. Let's say I used, like, when I landed in Germany, I was again the only woman at that time, relatively young, working on that year by year, and of course the only Italian, right? And so you get the jokes, Italy, spaghetti, pizza, and so on and so forth. And rather than taking it personally, I played along, right? And so I in a couple of occasions invited my colleagues for breakfast, or brought food in the office, to demonstrate, yes, and we do it better, right? So you very often also jokes which are about, in the gray zone, you can reply to with humor, but you always need to know very well where the boundaries are, right? And never be afraid to speak in case it gets uncomfortable for you, being the only person, of a certain gender or ethnic background, nationality, whatever, right? And that did happen also in a couple of occasions, right? And you may think, well, it's absolutely harmless, but okay, when you get introduced as our beautiful new manager, et cetera, yes, okay, thank you, but that's not what I'm here for, right? And so I had to say thank you, and please don't do it anymore. I don't feel comfortable with that, right? So I think it's very important to know where the line is, not to take too personally remarks you will hear very often. It's, just a matter of not being used to have diversity around the table, right? So it's a matter of playing a bit along. Humor is always a good way to stop certain jokes from rolling on, and if it gets uncomfortable, speak immediately.
Yeah, when I was reading about your work and your background, I was like, wow, she is such an amazing, inspiring, like put together person. And when you see all these experiences you've had, it's, a lot of other people can relate to it. And it's really nice to see how you're able to grow from those experiences and create better versions of yourself, which I think is absolutely, again, very inspiring. And so I'm very curious, to understand also what excites you and what makes you nervous about the future of the space industry, because you've been a part of this industry for a long time. So what are your thoughts?
We kind of touched upon the topic already at the beginning, and that's really the topic of sustainability. Sustainability as a whole, I think, is a challenge for the whole industry of aviation and space. And what makes me nervous in a way is that we don't have solutions yet. We have different solutions we're working on. We are persuaded that there are certain technology pathways which are very, very promising, or we need to continue working in this direction. But I would lie to you if I told you I know exactly how this all will pan out and it will work and no worries. No, else, if this were the case, we wouldn't be doing anything different, right? So the whole industry is really going through a crossroad point, and really joining forces to tackle the problem of CO2 emissions for aviation, of noise emissions. Let's not forget noise. That's something you don't touch it, but it's pollution in a different way, right? And definitely material, right? Ideally, our products shall be completely recyclable at the end of their service life, and also the way we manufacture and assemble our products shall be as neutral as possible in terms of impact on the resources of our planet. And indeed, I've seen some wonderful documentaries around the problem of around the ocean, right? The ocean 20, 30, 40 years ago was also considered infinitely big, and therefore not much attention was given to what we were putting in there. And space is similar. Space is huge. I mean, we're talking about trillions of cubic miles, right? And for many, space is still empty. But if we do not adopt today solutions to make sure that we leave nothing behind when we launch rockets, when we put in orbit satellites, then probably not the next generation, but the one right after will have a problem leaving the planet, exploring space. So this is definitely something, again, for which there is no immediate solution, and the technologies to actively remove debris from space are not quite there. But I have absolutely great hopes and conviction that we will get there eventually.
Yeah, the space industry provides you a place where you can innovate and you can, foster that change. So I'm really excited to see the future solutions and innovative, creative solutions that we do come up with. And to wrap up the interview, kind of combining your journey together as well as your research, I know we touched on this a little bit, but just to reemphasize, what is the final piece of advice would you give for young students in high school, college, maybe the beginning of their career development stages? What advice would you give them in pursuit of their passion in the STEM field, space industry, really anything that they want to do, something that you wish you knew when you were younger?
Well, first of all, the challenges I mentioned are just humongous. They're huge. And just as there will be no single technology to tackle all these challenges, there will be no single individual, right? So we need everyone on board, everyone with they have to bring into solving this challenge, right? So if I'd have to really pick one message to all young people out there, maybe considering whether they should embrace a STEM career or not, my advice is do it. Just do it, because there's no more exciting place to be. There's place for everyone. And again, with all your elements of diversity, we need you. We need you. So be yourself, bring along all what you have to bring, follow your passion, because that will be the greatest fuel to propel you throughout your journey and to help you overcome and grow through any obstacle you will find.
Yeah, thank you for that message. I think it really drives home the point of Ignited Thinkers, which is to show everyone that space is truly for all. There's not a certain stereotype or person that fits in, but everyone has their own skills, own personalities that bring something to the table. And so I want to thank you so much for taking your time to share your story with us. Everything you said was extremely inspiring. I know I was inspired, and I'm sure many others who are listening out there are inspired. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gitika. It's been a great pleasure, and keep in touch.